Frank Savino. What are you doing, my friend?
Good to see you. Good to see you. Good
Come
to be
on.
here.
I just saw you down in Baja,
Yeah.
and that was such a remarkable little reunion.
Absolutely.
Especially to see you in Mexico, because
Yeah.
you're living down there now, right?
Yes, I am.
And
Yes.
and how is it?
Oh, I enjoy every minute of it. It's great. You know, I'm working on the language barrier, but it's getting better all the time.
It just takes a little time, right?
Yeah.
You kind of have to immerse yourself in it. At least when I went through high school Spanish, and when I got out of high school Spanish, I couldn't say hola
Right.
because I wasn't a really great student in those
Right.
days. And then I went to Costa Rica, and I was in a lay missionary thing. So I went with a Catholic priest from my high school, and then it was just like they throw you out there, and you're like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And then you start meeting these interesting people and these great kids that you're teaching. You're like,
Yes.
I got to know what they're saying.
Right.
And
right.
so living down there, that gives you a huge inducement to learn.
Yes, it does, and I try to immerse myself in the not only the culture but in the language, and I've actually been participating in a lot of charity work and stuff. So that helps a lot because the people you're helping are all Mexican nationals, and it's kind of a requirement that you can't do what we have done all of our lives growing up in like LA County and having a very limited amount of Spanish mixed in with a lot of English. So
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
I've already mentioned to you all the charity stuff we have in the next few months, and you said, I'm in.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in.
And that's going to be great.
Yeah. I just right now we do some work with the orphanages and with the hungry through Blues Against Hunger Society and places like that. Things like that. So, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying my semi-retirement.
And it's part of the reason why I feel like we bond, because to me, you've always been such a gentleman, such a great person. I've cherished all the years we've known one another, and we're going to go in this podcast. We're going to go backwards and learn how you got started and everything else. But just right now in Mexico, the fact that you're reaching out and helping people, you realize living there's not a real big safety net down there.
No, there is virtually none.
Yeah.
So
once you are down at that poverty level,
yes,
it's hard to get out of it.
Yes.
Especially, it's just really difficult. So my hat's off to you helping so many people down there.
Thank you.
And you mentioned the cultural stuff. I mean, we just finished up Dia de los Muertos down there. That to me is one of the greatest festivals or holidays, whatever you want to call
Fantastic.
it. Isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I mean, Halloween, Halloween is like you scare people and you get candy, but this is way more profound.
Yes.
It's about remembering those people
And
who've gone
honoring,
there.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually went to I've been doing a lot of work in the Aztec type traditions.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how they remember their past, their people who have passed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
once you get your Spanish down, you'll have to start working on your Nahuatl, right?
Yeah. We were honored to have a chief from the Lakota Sioux tribe from South Dakota come down, and he stayed for about 10 days.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of the people from our group from Tijuana had the opportunity and the blessing of his teachings. And it's very, very interesting, and it goes very deep. So, yeah. So
Excellent. I love it. So you and I have that in common now also. Love for Mexico, the people, the culture, the whole thing.
absolutely.
Yeah. So let's go back in Frank Savino's past a little bit. How did you first of all get interested in sport fishing, and what age did that occur? When did you get that magical first tug at your fishing line and say, I'm hooked. I love this.
Right. Well, basically, I'll condense it down. When I was very young, 3-4 years old, my father and my uncle belonged to the La Mirada Rod and Gun Club. They also were part of the Southwest Anglers button thing, where you get buttons for certain fish over certain sizes, and certain hunting buttons. And when I was about 5 years old, I caught my first albacore, and I caught it on Steve Giffin's old boat.
The Holiday.
The old Holiday.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
65-footer.
Yep, with the crow's nest.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Yes. And so I just kind of, when I was 9.
Yeah, who took you on that trip? Your dad?
Yeah, my dad and my uncle. It was a club trip.
Yeah.
And so we went on that, and I always used to go on those trips with them. And then when I was 1969, the deckhand handed me a scrub brush and said, "Here you go, kid. You start in the bow, work your way back. Don't miss anything."
Yeah, right.
So, and I was hooked. I loved it. I didn't care that, it was after fishing all day and scrubbing the boat. To me, that was a great trade.
Yeah,
So,
right. And it was almost like you got elevated to this. You're scrubbing the boat, and all these other guys are not.
Yeah.
And you're on the boat when everybody
Right.
gets off, right?
Exactly.
And you felt great about that.
Yes, I did. And it just went from there. The first time I got paid as a deckhand was in 1972. I was 12, and I think it was $12 a day. and at that time I was a junior deckhand, so I didn't get any share of the tips at that time.
Yeah.
But I didn't care. So. But yeah, I actually had the honor of working with some of the industry's greatest, Bill Poole and Bruce Barnes and Steve Giffin, Buzzy, people like that. I spent most of my teenage years when I wasn't working out for football or anything like that. I would stay with my uncle, and he lived down there. He had tackle shops, Bob's Bait and Tackle. He started in Escondido, and he ended up with like 7 total. And so when I wasn't working in his shop, listening to all the fishermen's stories, I was out fishing and working and all that. So
as you look back at it, was it a good life?
Yes.
Did you enjoy it?
Yes.
Was it one of those things like you get it in your blood and you can't get it out?
Yes.
Is it still in there?
I still have it.
Yeah.
When I quote unquote semi-retired, I really, the first year or so, I really didn't miss the ocean.
Yeah.
But it didn't take very long, and now it's still, I get out there every once in a while. I go surf fishing a lot, as you know.
I'm going to join you soon.
Yeah, and I got actually one of the boats I used to own, the California Dawn, is out of Berkeley Marina up in San Francisco Bay. And this guy, James Smith, is a buddy of mine, and it's kind of neat going on my old boat.
Yeah, I
fishing,
bet.
Catching, he fishes a lot of halibut and striped bass, stripers and stuff. And it's really a lot of fun, and it kind of gives me my fix that I need every once in a while for being out on the ocean.
You said you didn't miss the ocean that first year, but I don't think it was the ocean that chased you away from this business.
No.
It had to have been, I'm going to guess, just, well, why don't you tell us? I have my guess at it. I mean, it gets rough with sometimes passengers that are not understanding what is going on. Perfect example. See, you're up there trying to find fish. You're doing everything you can, and you got a guy out your window within earshot saying, "Boy, this guy sucks.
Yeah.
This guy has no clue what he's doing." Now you move into the era of social media.
Yeah.
And it gets crazy.
Yes.
Am I on the right track?
No, you're on the right track. I think it kind of gave me, I had to take a step back because, you can do one of two things as a captain. You can either let all that go and let it go in one ear and out the other. But I grew up in the era of, keep pounding that square peg in the round hole no matter what, and trying to make it work.
Yeah.
Even though you're at the mercy of Mother Nature, you're at the mercy of currents and weather patterns and all that. So, and I think what got me really was we were picking away at the bluefin every day back in 2014, all by ourselves. Everybody else was down on the 14 chasing these little 6-7 pound yellowfin.
So what boat are we on, and where
I
are
was
we?
on the Enterprise.
Okay, out of Marina?
It was out of Marina Sportfishing.
Yeah.
Of course, now it's out of Pier Point.
Yes.
Same owner, but different landing.
Yeah.
But and I had a customer that was actually out doing a Yelp review in the middle of the day. He'd had too much to drink before he came to the boat and continued on the boat. We were picking away, and bluefin, they can be where you're hanging 3 or 4 at a time, or you're hanging one every 2-3 minutes. But we had a decent pick going, and this guy just blasted the boat. And he was on the boat, and everybody else were, picking away, and everybody had at least one. Even I caught one, so they were that thick.
And you never know when the light switch is going to go on either.
Exactly.
And it's going to, yeah.
Exactly. So it just after that, I said, at the end of the season, I think I'm going to take a break.
Yeah.
So I took a break from it for a while, and but that doesn't leave, that whole thing. I like whenever I go out anywhere with anybody, whether it's on a ponga or I'm by myself on a beach or whatever, that's when I feel whole, I still feel whole, so.
I get it. I totally get it, because I have that same thing. Now I don't fish that much anymore, and people go, "Don't you want to fish?" And I say, "Hey, I got a new job here now. My job is content,
Right.
So I'm filming our possible demise at La Bufadora,
Right.
Instead of helping the guys get the lobster trap out, I'm documenting our deaths."
Right. That was a fantastic video.
Oh my
by the
God.
way.
Was that funny or what?
Oh my goodness. And the thing is I have seen that from the land side of La Bufadora. I've never seen it from the ocean side looking in.
Yeah.
And that was some pretty good video. I was like, wow.
Yeah, me too. I mean, when we pulled in there, I was like, this is freaking awesome. You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
And just seeing it from that side, looking up at everybody and kind of getting that view, it was cool until we got that lobster trap in there.
Right.
But let's go back in chronologically and start at the beginning. First boat that you ever were captain of. What is it?
The first boat that I was ever officially, not a second ticket, the first boat that I was a captain of was, I had an opportunity, thanks to Tom Hesketh, of buying into the Longfin, which is of course a Mirage now out of Port Hueneme.
Yeah, beautiful boat.
And I pretty much bought myself a job, because back then it was so hard to get your license, and they just didn't let anybody just come in and run the boat. So you had to put in your time, and that was 1980, end of 83. Yeah, I had just finished up what I consider the last El Nino before this one we had. And and then I had moved to Newport, and decided to buy into a boat, and I had a little extra savings, and so I bought into a boat, and it kind of went from there. That was the first boat that I ever ran the boat and was captain.
And where was that out of?
That was, at the time, it was out of Newport Landing when they had just opened up. It had been Art's landing for decades, and Art was retiring, so he went ahead and sold the business to Tom Hesketh and his wife Lindsay. And so it was kind of a new operation. They had the Longfin, and they were in the process. They had just bought the Stagnaro 3 out of Moss Landing, and that turned into the Southern Cal. So.
Oh, shoot.
Which was the second boat I ever ran as a licensed captain.
Yeah, and so did you feel the weight of that on your shoulders? Because now not only are you a young captain, but you're also a boat owner, so you have a business.
Yes.
There's a lot. I mean, I don't think people understand. I think they think your job is to find fish. Yeah. But you're running a business, including a restaurant, basically.
Basically.
And the supplies you need for the restaurant, and you've got every soul's safety in the palm of your hands, and I know you took that very seriously. There's a lot that goes into this.
Yes, I was actually, it had been something I wanted to do as a little kid. So when I took my oath at the Coast Guard after I'd passed my test and everything, I took that serious and still take it serious. If I ever run a boat, even now, after all these years, when they step on the boat until they step off, I took an oath that their safety was in my hands, and that it would be on me should something happen. So that was very important to me. Also, you have to be in a management position. You also have to have a skill set in case something goes wrong and something breaks. You need to at least be able to somehow get the boat back to the dock and get the people off safely. And you have to do a lot of repairs on the fly, because anything mechanical is going to break, especially if it's going a total of 20 hours a day, 7 days a week during the summertime, you're going to have things break.
Yep.
And then you also have to be the calm in the storm when it comes to either weather or people arguing or whatever that case may be. You need to be not only the referee, but you need to be the voice of reason.
Yeah, you have to de-escalate
Yeah.
those situations as opposed to making them worse
Right.
by panicking or
Right.
yeah.
You know, and there's all the other little things that over the years, you know, even before it was a big thing, you know, I had a problem with people throwing trash over the side and stuff. And
because when we were growing up, I mean, I remember guys taking garbage bags and throwing them overboard, and you'd watch it going. And as a kid, kind of like thought, well, I guess
Really?
that's the way. Yeah, right. So you were enforcing that, or trying to educate people?
I tried to educate people on that. In my speeches, I usually included the location of the trash bags, the location of the restrooms, and all that, and not to throw anything down in the toilets that would end up in the ocean. That would be not good for the environment. You know, I'm not a drum banging environmentalist, but I really truly think that we should never poop where we eat, and I've always thought of that even when I was a kid. So
yeah,
and some of that was from my dad and my uncle, but a lot of that was just something I took a little further.
Work ethic, man, I'll tell you, that has followed me throughout the years. It followed me to China when I went and taught there, and I saw teachers who were like, oh my God, are you serious? You know, we have to teach 2 hours today, and we have a half-hour meeting today. Oh, this is awesome. You know, and I'm like, what the hell are you guys realize how easy this is and how lucky we are? And work ethic is something that you have to have in this business.
Right. I've always felt blessed to where the work ethic came easy to me.
Because you loved what you were doing?
I loved what I was doing. Didn't matter how many hours I was out there. Didn't matter how many days in a row. When I got to the point where it was just, I'll just take all of it. Anything you guys do. I ended up running a lot of boats, to give guys days off, or if they wanted to go on vacation in the middle of the summer, which it was always strange to me, because in the middle of the summer when you make your money, why would you plan a vacation? I could not. They do. They understand it, but I didn't. But I was happy to run their boats for them.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This is the time when we're making our money.
Yeah.
And as you look back at the business, there was a time when drug usage was a little bit out of control. Have you seen that improve over the years, or is it still a problem?
It's still a problem.
And it was really bad at one time.
It was bad. When I was 16, 17 years old, it was just commonplace for one of the customers to come up and put an open Budweiser on the fillet table while I was filleting fish. And I wasn't old enough to drink, but that was just commonplace.
Yeah.
You know, it was just no big deal. And until the second boat I owned, the California Dawn, I had gotten a thing from the Coast Guard in 1985 that said, come January 1st, 1986, we will be doing random drug testing, and we will be doing this and that. And so I had to, have a crew meeting and tell them all, look, whatever you do, whatever you got, it's no longer, a part of the game. We need to make sure that we clean it up. And it cleaned up the industry quite well for a long time. It's backslid a little bit, but I would say that it is still, I know it is still way better than it used to be, because, when you, especially like in a place like San Diego, where you're turning and burning, turning and burning. It was commonplace back then to make sure that you were up when you were supposed to be up, and that when it was time to sleep and you needed an hour and a half, you had to do a little something, and everybody did it. Doesn't make it right. And now with everything the way it is, and I look back at it now, and a lot of people that I know ended up losing their life, either dying at 40 years old from a massive heart attack or whatever, because they were doing stuff and did not stop. And their bodies never had a chance to recuperate. And a lot of my heroes, a lot of people I looked up to when I was a teenager, are gone now.
And principally due to
Yes.
drugs, right?
Drug use.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alcoholism,
Yes.
perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I won't mention the guys, but when I was a raging alcoholic, I was drinking with two guys specifically most of the time. And about 10 years ago, I stopped, and they didn't. And they're both dead.
Yeah.
And that would be me too. I have no doubt about it. It's such an awful thing, alcoholism and drug.
Yes.
And I'm not pointing at anybody because I was one of them.
I know.
I'm like 1 second away from falling back into it.
Right.
I keep that in my head.
Right. That's very important. And I always used to think that me personally, why would you take an oath and then take chances with those people's lives?
Yeah.
And I'm not judging anybody or anything like that. For me, it was not something that I did.
Yeah.
And living in an altered state is one thing, but doing it with other people's lives on the line.
There you go.
And like I said, I lost a lot of heroes, a lot of people that I really looked up to that by the time they were 40, they were dead.
God, that's awful, isn't it?
So, yes.
So at one time here in Southern California, this is not the case anymore, all the rage was shark fishing.
Yes, it was.
And you were in on that. Now,
Yeah.
and there was always this thing about shark fishing, they're a little bit different.
Right.
It's a different breed, right?
Yes, it is.
So tell us about your shark fishing venture, on what boat, where you ran out of, and how it was.
Well, when I was running out of Davies Locker with the California Dawn,
Yeah.
and it being a charter boat, I did strictly charters. Or if the Freelance or the Thunderbird, if somebody was chartered, I would take their open party run. They allowed me, Don Brockman and the rest of the group down there allowed me to go 3 days and 3 nights a week doing exclusive shark trips. And that was during the 80s. It was about 10 years or so after Jaws came out and people were really into it. And I found a system that worked. And at the time, it was myself and Joe Berrien had the bongos.
Right.
And
Is Joe Berrien still around?
Yeah, he's still
Good.
around. He's
Good.
still around.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they between him and I, he had developed that bongos fishing bait, and it not only works for sharks. You actually take it to Catalina, poke some holes in the 5-gallon bucket, put a rope on it, hang it over the side, and it's a constant chum line for that. You watch the bass come up and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so at that time, we were the only 2 boats doing it, and it was very popular. But the flip side to that was you met some very interesting characters.
Yeah, what did it attract? What kind of people?
Well, I had, like, on Friday nights, I knew everybody on the boat. I knew their name. They all came from Banning or Rialto and all that. And they were mostly the rough and tumble kind, rough and tumble.
Blue collar,
roughs, and all that.
Ready to go out and take on the mighty shark.
Yeah. And I had a couple that wore matching, camouflage outfits and all that. It was great. I loved it. But there was, every once in a while, there was somebody, but I usually didn't have to deal with the jerks because the people who came with me every week, no matter whether it was a Monday night or a Wednesday night or whatever, they always had my back.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. But yeah, it was good. And at the time, the fishing was really good. I regret killing the first couple of years. A lot of people say I want them, even though it was a blue shark.
Yeah.
And we would kill it, and then it ended up being left on the boat. And I regret that. I can't take that back.
Right.
But we did start, cutting them loose afterwards, and just mainly keeping the makos and the threshers. And we got a baby great white one time.
Oh yeah.
Right outside the Newport Pier.
How big?
Right there. It was only about 30 pounds. Matter of fact, he was hanging in the office in Davies Locker for years.
Wow.
And I don't know if he's still there or not, but yeah, it was neat. I actually had a time period there where off of Dana Point at about 2:00 in the afternoon, this 12-footer would show up, and it was the same shark. He had kind of like a question mark scar on his back, like he won an argument with a boat prop or whatever.
Yeah.
But he would show up and then he'd disappear, and then eventually at least one rod would start going off, and we never had a prayer to catch him.
No stopping it.
No stopping. He was about 6 foot in girth. He was a
Oh, my
big boy. He
God.
was 5 foot in girth and about 12 to 13 foot long.
And how many pounds have you guessed?
I don't know. He was definitely over 1,000.
Jeez.
Definitely. Yeah, and then there was, we used to see, there was a mako shark that used to jump out of the water a lot in that same area. And there was a guy in a skiff that made a publication, because he was out there by himself in an old man in the sea kind of thing in a small boat.
Yeah.
And hooked him and managed to get him and rope him, and that fish weighed a little bit over 1,000 pounds.
Wow.
So, you know. But it's something just to see him jump, even if you don't.
Oh,
hook
God,
him, you
yes.
know, when you got 1,000-pound fish getting airborne, you know, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's amazing,
Yeah.
isn't it? How did you fish for those things, and how many people were on the boat at one
Well,
time?
we limited the load to 18 people. The boat was 50 foot long, and we limited it to 18 people and charged a little bit more money. And we would rig up. We had 7-strand wire, and you know, a large swivel and like a 10-aught hook, and usually about anywhere from 4 to 6 foot a leader, you know, and that worked out very well, you know.
Were you fishing with balloons or?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes some people fished exclusively with balloons. Other people like to go deep.
Yeah.
It all depended, and it seems like we got bit. Most of the time, we got bit on the balloon. We did.
Yeah.
The bigger fish seemed to come, like if somebody sent it down about 150 feet, the bigger fish would come on that.
Yeah.
But the more action was up towards the surface.
Biggest shark that you ever caught running that trip?
Biggest one, we had one way out at 660 on the dock.
Wow.
At,
A mako?
Davies Locker. Yes. a
Wow.
mako. And we had quite a few over 150 pounds.
Jeez.
Yeah. But it was, you know, it was fun. You know, I enjoyed it. It was a good experience of my life, you know. Yeah, I really don't have any regrets. I'm kind of glad that they've tapered that off now.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of problems with poaching and stuff now, and so they've at least regulated it, you know, and it's more beneficial. It's like the squid fishing. When I would do it during the wintertime in the 80s just to, you know, pay the bills and pay the rent. And it was just 3 boats at the time. It was myself, a boat called the Norma Jean, and a converted sailboat called the Brigadoon. And that was it. But squid was $200 a ton at the time, and mackerel was $180 a ton, and they didn't have to pay a light boat. So they would come and look at me right before daylight if they struck out, you know. And I spent a lot of times with 400 or 500 tons under the boat, and nobody to set it.
Oh my God.
But now they've got it regulated, at least because the price is so high, everybody wants to do it. And
Yeah.
now they've regulated it to where, you know, there's paperwork involved now and stuff to kind of keep an eye on the supply as far as what is around, when it's around. They've got more of an idea of how it cycles. So,
yes.
you know, and that is a good thing, because when the price went up the first couple of years and they had no regulation, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah. I remember we were doing 976 tuna twilight trips with you on the Enterprise, and how much fun they were. And you know, twilight fishing hasn't been that good for a long time. You could go out there and frickin' whale on the gar, the barracuda, and the sand bass, and be done at a fairly decent hour. However, that all kind of changed. I mean, it got later and later and later at some point. But those were fun trips with you.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed them. Heck, you know, I remember when you brought all those kids out, and your basketball buddy,
Flynn Robinson. Oh man,
matter of fact,
I
I have my spot book still has his notes in it and his signature in it.
What a lovely guy.
That was a special trip, and he was a special human being.
You got it, Frank.
Rest in peace. He was a great guy. But I think you had brought like 60 some people that trip.
Yeah.
And everybody got, the ones that weren't laying in the galley sleeping were catching all they wanted. So
Yeah.
it was fun.
It's funny that you mentioned Flynn because, man, was such a great human being. I loved him, and you immediately were drawn to him,
Yes,
man. You wanted that autograph from him, and
Yeah.
he played with Will Chamberlain, for God's sakes. And then he's in my backyard shooting free throws with my kids. And oh my God. And then Patrick and I went to his funeral, which was in South Central LA. And so I came walking in with Patrick, who was kind of playing football, so he's kind of a buff kid, And I walk in, and the pastor comes out and he goes, What's the problem here? You got to bring a bodyguard because you're in the hood? And I said, that's my son, Pastor. But I got to tell you, Frank, I don't know if I've ever told you this. So we're sitting there, and the ceremony is going on. The pastor is doing his thing, and this guy walks in and sits right in front of Patrick and I. And I'm not sure Patrick knows who it is, so I elbow him. I go, you know who that is? He goes, no. And I go, that's frigging Jerry West.
No kidding.
Jerry West flew all the way down for Flynn's funeral. Now, Flynn was not a huge, he wasn't Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or anything else.
No.
But that told me a lot about Jerry West.
Yes.
Told me a lot about him.
About Jerry West and about Flynn.
Yes.
Because Flynn,
correct.
The first time I met Flynn, his, for lack of a better term, his aura, the way he handled himself and the way he spoke, was with such respect and reverence for everybody.
Yes.
And that says a lot about both Jerry West thinking enough it was important for him to be there, and that's because of the person Flynn was.
Absolutely. And he was so good with kids.
Yes.
He was so good. I'll tell you a funny one. And now that you're studying Spanish, you'll like this. So we did a trip with a bunch of kids, orphanage, out of Ensenada. And we get on the Ensenada Clipper, I think it was, and we're going out. Flynn's talking to this girl, orphan girl. And he's, hey, are you having a good, what's going on? And so he says to her, how old are you? In English. And she says, 15. And he says, why can't you say? He's hearing can't say. And she goes, 15. And he goes, I don't understand. Why can't you say how old you are? Oh my God, that played out for so. Yeah. I let it go because it was so magical.
Oh yeah,
so cute.
That's
finally
one of those moments.
She's 15.
Yeah.
But that was a great trip. And John Klein was there. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Schmidt was there, and so it was one of those magical moments for sure. Let's talk about your San Diego career. You mentioned Buzz, you mentioned Bill Poole, you mentioned all those guys. So I want to kind of get into their personalities, but when did you start in San Diego, on what boat?
Well, the first, as far as working, the first boat was the old Holiday, Steve Giffin. And of course, Bruce Barnes was a very good friend of mine. As a matter of fact, most of the guys were really good friends with my uncle, because he had the tackle shops. And
Bruce Barnes, Qualifier 105.
Yes, yeah. And then I used to watch when Gadosh had the New Loan, and he'd be backing it into the dock there. I used to get a charge because it had those old 671s in it, and it would go brrr, and it would echo off the seawall. And my heart would start
Me too.
Quick.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I ended up, I worked on that boat. I worked on the New Loan, the old Holiday. I worked with Buzzy a little bit on the Prowler. Of course, Giffin. I think I either deadheaded or worked for quite a few of them. Bill Poole was a screamer. Not as big a screamer as Art Taylor.
So what do you mean? Give an example.
Well, back in the day, that was just standard.
Yeah.
Yelling at customers, and especially
take your thumb off the spool.
Right,
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. One of them, I won't mention which one because I think he is still around, but one of them kept yelling at this one guy that if he kept putting his thumb on the spool, he was going to cut it off. I'm going to take my dikes and cut it off. But that was during a different era in the 70s,
right.
And that was just standard, and they took it very serious, and I was fortunate enough to learn from some of the best. You know? And Danny and Donnie Sampson, Dave Williams was running the New Loan when I was working on it, and for a grumpy old SOB that he was, all you had to do was keep your mouth shut and watch what he did.
And learn.
And learn.
Yeah.
And I found out over the years that with most of those guys down there, Gary Black was a great teacher, but Gary was the kind of guy that didn't say 2 words. He said very little.
Yeah.
But you just watched him because he was a master at his craft.
Yeah.
And, San Diego, there was a lot of them. I never had the pleasure of working with Frank LoPreste, but his reputation was such that everybody that did work for him came away a better fisherman. Even the passengers that went on with him came back better fishermen. So
yeah, I was on the Searcher and went from being a deadhead to actually working some trips with Leroy and Norm, and Frank was running the boat. So yeah, it was like I was still at that. Yeah, I know, man. Let me tell you. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was. I mean, he was all business, man, and he was smoking in those days, as I remember, and. Like, the 105 would get a jig strike next to us, and then over on this side, the low end would go into a jig strike, and we're still moving along. This wasn't all the time, but this was, and I remember taking his cigarettes and throwing them at the dash and going, come on, we need to get bit here. And then boom, you'd light up with albacore, and it was great. A guy named Bob Osborne used to work on the Holiday with Steve Giffin. So I'm going to tell you what he told me, and you tell me, does this ring true or not? He said Giffin was a student of everything that was going on, and on the way out, he would have him write down the water temperatures every, I don't know, mile or quarter, and then he'd study that, and then he wouldn't necessarily run back to where you caught albacore the day before. He'd figure out where. Does this all make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay.
He and Boogie Shears, Mel's kid, were both of that same exact type of personality.
Yeah.
Boogie was a little bit louder. Steve was not very loud, but Steve was educated, and he seemed to be able to figure out in a short order which way the fish were moving. He kept track of the tides, the currents, the moon phase, all that stuff, and always gave himself the best options for catching fish.
And did it pay off?
It paid off.
Yeah.
A lot. There was times, Boogie was a little bit, sometimes he'd go out into left field, and everybody else was just kind of going where they were going. And sometimes a lot of times he was the hero. They'd be 20 miles below him, and he'd be calling them on the radio going, we're bent, we're almost out of bait, you guys better hurry up. And they're like, well, we got a 2-hour run to him. Well, who let him get out of their sight?
Yeah, right.
But a few times he ended up to zero. But those guys their educated guesses were better than if you had all the technology you have today with the color charts for the currents and where the warmer water is, where the breaks are and stuff. They had more of a fish sense, and I learned a lot of that from those guys. So.
Steve ended up in some kind of a problem at some point in his career, right?
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, did he lose the Holiday, or what happened there?
Yes. What happened was there was a rumor that the authorities had gotten a hold of, and they came down and seized the boat. And instead of just looking through it, and then when they did find a little something that they didn't that was contraband, then they cut the whole boat. They cut all the plumbing, and like every
they went through the entire
2 feet. They went through the entire boat.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of things they didn't really have to do, but he never recovered.
Well, that's
from
a
that,
shame,
really.
right? Because he was so talented.
Yeah. And I used to. I physically watched him deteriorate after that.
Really?
Because it was
his life, right?
Yes, and that was
Heart.
His total heart, his life, and unfortunately, what happened. The details are always sketchy on those, and it's you don't know. Thank goodness we didn't have social media back then, because the rumors would have been spreading like wildfire. But what it boils down to is it ruined him. The boat got put back together and all that. It cost a lot of money, and pretty much took everything he had and then some. And he had some people help him get the boat back together and everything, but he was not allowed to run it. He had to hire people to run it, and he was allowed to be on there. But I think that just kind of, it was a gut punch to him that he never recovered from.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate.
You mentioned the new Lo-Am backing in and those 671s and that sound. Man, it used to remind me of like warming up for the Indy 500
Absolutely.
down there, right?
Yeah,
I mean, all those boats, you'd hear them boom, boom, and, right?
Yes.
And then somebody else would fire up. And what was it like during the heyday? I was there, but maybe you can tell everybody the heyday of albacore fishing out of San Diego, which I don't believe is gone. I believe
No, it's coming.
It's going to cycle back.
It's going to cycle back.
Yeah.
There's no problem. There's more pinhead bait out there now. I had a buddy of mine that used to work on the boat for Scripps, and that's all they did was count anchovies, count schools of anchovies. They go around the entire Pacific, and they kept track of those. And according to the data, it is as good a crop of anchovies and 64-degree water in that area that is swinging around.
Right.
Most of these bluefin kind of got stuck up here in the warm water, and until that food supply diminishes, they'll be here, no matter what the water temp is, and they're kind of stuck in that. But what is swinging up is that a little bit cooler water, 64 and a half, to around 66-degree water, and it's loaded with food. And every jig boat that I've talked to is saying that it's, the angle is changing the last few years. It used to be they'd chase them from the South Pacific and chase them up to Washington, but it was further offshore. It seems like the band the last couple of years has had a tendency to swing in more.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I have property up in Eureka, and a few years ago I went out there, and the 40-pound albacore were about 12 to 15 miles outside of Humboldt Bay Harbor, and they were all you wanted. It's just nobody, it's just no fishing pressure up there.
Yeah.
And once that body of fish that has been moving that way start swinging in a little bit more to where they're within day and a half or 2-day range, then you'll see quite a change in the numbers of albacore.
I don't think people realize, I talked about working for LoPreste. I don't think people realize we would have 90 freaking people on the searcher fishing for albacore.
Yes.
Like when you'd run up to the bow to gaff a fish, I mean, it was like you needed a machete or something to get through all the people. Yeah. It was such a fever down there, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And it was amazing. Well, 1983 on the new Lo-Am, when I was working there, and we had those 12 to 20-pound yellowfin, and I actually just stationed myself in the bow with a gaff because there was 60 bunks and Danny Sampson on the boat, and he also sold 8 non-bunk tickets for people that could sleep
in the galley.
Yeah, and that was get in at 10:30, leave at 11. Get in every day, and
brutal schedule.
Yeah, but the fishing was just phenomenal. So and it was an experience. And like you said, putting 90 people on a boat and going and just catching albacore when you could walk across them was just insane.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it was 81 or 82, I think was probably the best albacore year I had seen. And the spots were huge. You could pull up into an area with discoloration on the water, and it was solid albacore, just solid.
Eddie McEwen claimed to me, and I'll take him at his word, he claimed to me that sometimes when he started to get to an area, before he got a jig strike, before he saw any fish, he could smell them.
Yeah, I believe it. I could smell,
Yeah, right?
You're not smelling BS. He could smell them.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I always know, because I ran so many twilight trips, when I'd be running through bait or something, I could smell there is a distinct smell to sardines.
Yes.
and there is also a distinct smell to anchovies. So I wouldn't doubt it for a second that you could smell, the albacore, because they have their own, it's like anything else. It's alive and it's giving off whatever.
It's crazy, and for sure barracuda, right?
Oh, yeah.
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 I mean, they have a very distinct smell to
Yeah,
them.
yeah. You can pass them in the middle of the night, and you know exactly what they are because they have a very distinct smell.
Were you in San Diego during the disaster with the fishing fool? Do you remember that? Down there at Ben's Rock?
Gary was a good friend of mine. He was actually a very close friend with Tom Hesketh.
Yeah.
And I was in out of Newport Landing, and I had my partnership in the longfin at the time. And I remember when that happened.
Can you tell that story? Do you remember?
Basically,
a rogue wave, right?
Yeah, it was a rogue wave. They were fishing Roca Bend, which is a boiler,
Near San Martin Island.
Near San Martin. And usually I knew skippers that would anchor on it, but most skippers would live boat it. And he was live boating it, and just out of nowhere, here comes this giant, massive wave, and it rolled it over, and they lost everybody, but I think the galley cook and one other guy. The galley cook and one other guy managed to make it to San Martin. I know they were holding on to an igloo cooler that had been floating.
I think some Mexican lobster fishermen might have seen them and come out and rescued them.
Yes, but they had made it there, and that was very unfortunate. That was just
was horrible.
And
what year would that have been?
I want to say 84.
Something like that.
I'm not sure.
I'm not either.
I'm not sure.
But it was around that time.
Yeah. But Gary was very well respected.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, he was one of those captains that a lot of people thought well of, and he had major respect. It was one of those freak things that comes about. That was unfortunate.
Do you remember any of the dirty tricks, without mentioning who or anything? I mean, there was a lot of crap that went on. I mean, including, I can remember guys like pulling both chutes on the bait tank, doing a circle, or just running a circle around somebody that just bowed you.
Yeah.
Or do you remember any of that stuff? Or how crazy was it back in the day?
It was crazy. I won't steer into that one too much, but there was some crazy shenanigans. Some of it was in fun, but most of it
was deadly serious.
Was competition.
Yes.
And 9 times out of 10, the person, I'm not saying that anybody deserves something like that to happen to them, but 9 times out of 10, the person that got punked, which is what they call it now, I guess, kind of earned that.
Yeah.
And it was either that or the parking lot at that time.
Yeah.
And
you mean a fight up in the parking lot? Did that happen quite often?
A few times, but not too much.
Yeah.
It was more wives and girlfriends were waiting in the parking lot for the guy, and stuff like that. And that's tough. This business has always been tough on relationships.
Yeah.
Because you only have so much time to make your living. And for the first few years, most of the time, it's kind of neat being the skipper's girlfriend or the skipper's wife or whatever. But after a while, that loses its luster because the amount of time you spend at sea, and if you're any good at your craft, you need to put the time in. So.
Yeah, it's got to be, and you can make a good living in this business, but you're not getting super rich in this business. So it's a testament to me, at least, Frank, that you got to really love this.
Yes.
And you mentioned, just think about it. I mean, like you said, 10:30 in, 11 out. How hard that is on a relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
And like, you're right, hey man, I'm the captain's wife or girlfriend, and this is so cool, and then a year into it, it's like, I'm never seeing this guy.
Right. Yeah, it gets to that point, and it's I can't really honestly off the top of my head think of anybody who has been married for a very long time in this business and not at least had some major separations, breakups, whatever. And I know plenty of guys that have been married at least 3 times, because it's, like I said, it's great for a while, But and that goes the other way around too. There's a lot of gals that either deck or galley cook or whatever, and the guy can't take it. He works a 9-to-5 job, and he's taking care of the house and the kids, and she's working the season, and it's just rough on a relationship. So.
Yeah. What was your favorite gig? What boat did you enjoy running more than any other?
I don't know. I've got a lot of good ones.
Yeah, well,
I got a lot.
Then let's talk about them.
Well, I mean, there's nostalgia ones. Like I actually ran 9 months when Roy and Doris Peters were alive. I ran the city of Redondo one from the fall to the spring for them.
I never realized that.
That was a nostalgia one.
Yeah.
For me, because it was, I mean, that boat, for all intent and purposes, after the late '80s storm that rolled it up, upside down and tore it up, they put every dime they had into building it back up when pretty much everybody told them just scrap it.
Yeah.
And it was an honor because Roy Peters he's a Redondo legend.
He is. Yeah. You know what's funny? As a kid, I was down on the Redondo Special, and for whatever he would sit in the stern when the guys were scrubbing the boat and drink tequila. And like anytime you'd walk by him, he'd have some snide remark like, "Hey kid," Right. So I'm like looking down there, going, "When the hell is that guy going to go home? I don't want to walk by him tonight,"
Right.
And it was all in good fun, and it was cool. But you're right; he was such a legend with that little mustache, and his wife Doris, and
she was classic. She always made sure her makeup was perfect.
Yeah, I remember.
Always, she would cook in that galley and make sure her makeup was perfect every day. But
were they reasonable people to work for?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
they were I never had a problem working for them. Anything I needed or wanted to do with the boat was fine with them. They trusted my judgment, which was important. And but nostalgia-wise, that was really neat. I mean, and I ran the Sea Angler was built in 1926, and when Greg Watson Jr. owned it, I ran it out of here doing some sand dab trips and bass trips. That was neat because that's another nostalgic boat.
Yeah.
But I worked with most of my career, especially later on. I worked with Donnie Ashley, Curtis Wegener, and of course his wife Veronica.
Yeah.
And they kept me as busy as I wanted to be, and they were very hands off. They let me just do my thing.
That's great.
Every once in a while, I'd have a talk with one of them about one thing or another, and they say, "Oh, by the way, I heard this," or whatever, and kind of watch the language or something when their kids on the boat or something very minor like that. But they kept me as busy as I wanted to be, and with everything I had going on in my life and all the different boats I ran either second ticket or actually ran I think every boat they owned.
Wow.
Even when Guy Ashley had the Pacifica, and Keith Brewer was with him, Guy took a week off, and I did some trips with Keith, and that was kind of part of the Ashley family thing. So,
It sounds like that was one of your favorite gigs, and because they were hands off, they let you do your thing. They respected you and your judgment and everything else.
Yes, and it was even with you're always going to have disagreements, but they kept them to a minimum strictly because they trusted me, and they trusted the people that they had working for them that were my superiors. They trusted them too enough to give us quite a bit of autonomy to where we could go do what we wanted.
Our dear departed friend Will Eversman was sitting up there next to you with me, and he looked at me and he goes, "I smell smoke," and I'm like, "You are full of crap," and then he mentioned it to you.
Yeah.
And what happened?
Well, that was a thing. I won't mention his name, but one of the captains that used to run the boat had to have his card charger in for his phone. He installed one of those cigarette lighter type of things, and it had gotten hot on its own for whatever reason and decided to just go off, and and it started a little fire under the dashboard there. And yeah, we opened up the little hatch thing there, the access hatch, and yeah, it was smoldering pretty good.
It was.
Will stepped back and said, you have a fire extinguisher right there. Yeah, but that was just one of those weird things that happens,
Is that kind of similar, do you think, to what happened on the Conception, the dive boat that burned out? I know we don't know for sure.
We don't know for sure.
Yeah, something obviously.
But something was missed, and there has been a law for many, many years about having a deck watch.
Yes.
And that has gotten to be kind of like the duty that nobody wants.
Yeah.
Because when you're on the anchor and there's nothing to do,
it's boring,
and it's boring,
yeah,
and all that.
Boring, but necessary.
It's
highly,
absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
I think that regenerated the whole deck watch thing.
Me
now
too.
It's just unacceptable to have somebody sitting in the galley playing on their phone or whatever, instead of doing a roving check every once in a while, and at least opening the hatches to the engine hatch to make sure nothing's down there, nothing smells funny, or there's not something going on.
And this is a good time to remind even passengers, if you see somebody who's going and they have the heads up in the bow, or no matter what, they're going out on deck, it's a good time to say to them, hey, you need to have somebody standing and watching, or
yes.
I'll come out,
yes.
And watch with you. Everybody can, I know it's, it's the crew's responsibility, but as human beings, fellow human beings and passengers, you shouldn't let somebody go out on deck at night alone.
Absolutely. And, the mentality for so long had been that, whatever, everybody goes and, does that and uses the head up the side or whatever. But we had lost people in the industry over years that went out to take a leak and decided to go in the transom there and just, and the next thing you know, nobody knows they're gone till the next day.
Right.
And so it's important. It's like a lot of other things we have to live with now. If you see something, say something. And it kind of goes along with being your brother's keeper or your sister's keeper. Just kind of keep an eye on each other out there. Because the crew is the crew, and they are human too. And even though it's their job, they could miss something. So, and if you smell something or whatever, it's absolutely acceptable to talk to somebody and bring it to their attention.
My dear friend Jim Birkin, he was a newspaper writer. That happened to him up in Morro Bay. He was out albacore fishing, and unfortunately he got seasick. He went out at night, and we surmised that he went overboard. And that was just an awful time, because his kids, Sam and Matt, used to come over and play with my kids all the time. We were very close. I was supposed to be on that trip, but didn't go because I saw the weather, and I'll be perfectly honest, I wasn't afraid for my safety or anything like that. I was just like, I didn't want to deal with that weather,
Right.
I'll go on a day when it's calm.
Right.
And man, that morning when that happened and I got that phone call, it just ripped my heart out.
Right. Yes, if you see something, say something, and it's important now. It used to be, like I said, it used to not be a thing, and it was part of the fisherman's mentality that we're all rough and tumble here, and nothing's going to happen to any of us. Well, time has shown that things do happen.
So what do you say to all the gringos who are afraid to cross the border because they're going to get their head cut off? Oh my God! I hear that. I've been listening to that for 50 freaking years.
I know, right? And
oh my
the
God!
Thing is, it is such a rare and limited thing, and if you know all, it would take like a 4-hour show to go through all the details. But the bottom line is, it's safe down there, and if you're doing something stupid, you're going to end up in jail. Or
you can find trouble.
You can find trouble, but I don't have any problem.
Do you ever have any sense that it's dangerous or anything?
I don't. I really don't.
I know.
And it's like, even, like late at night in downtown Tijuana, as long as you keep your head about you, you don't,
you're not over in northern red light district
right,
area.
Right. If you're asking for trouble, you'll find plenty of it. But for the most part, no. And talk about great people, very nice people,
God.
Very helpful people, and very respectful people. And if you don't know you're doing something wrong, they will take the time out of their day to come over and let you know, hey, you may not want to, leave your wallet in the ashtray or just
common sense
thing that, from here, you throw your wallet in the glove box or something and close it up, and that's fine. But they see that you left a telephone or big things down there, like if you leave a pack of cigarettes sitting on the dash or whatever, they'll break a window to get that, and then of course while they're there they'll go through your car.
Yeah, right.
But those are just common sense things. Everything else is fine. It's a great place, and the weather's great this time of year, and I encourage anybody that wants to go down there right now. It's great that the summer crowds are gone. It's still beautiful weather and still lots of nice people and a lot of fun to be had.
Yeah.
And good fishing too.
Absolutely. I'll throw Tom Durr under the bus. He was in here the other day and he goes, hey, where are you coming from? I go, oh, Mexico. I wouldn't go there.
Oh.
It's dangerous. So Tom is a big political guy.
Yeah.
Right? And so he's always complaining that the other side, I won't even say what side he's on, but they don't have facts on their side. So I looked him right in the eye. I said, hey, let's have a data-driven argument on this right now. Show me the stats on how many tourists have been killed down there.
Right.
Come on, show them to me.
Yep.
And so he's looking at me. I could see the smoke coming out of his
Right.
ears. I go, come on, show, come on. And he's like, well, so-and-so told. I go, no.
Right.
And so the question when you go to anywhere and when you travel is not, can a bad thing happen to me? Yes, of course.
Yeah.
It's what are the chances
Right.
a bad thing can happen to you. That's risk assessment.
It's way better odds than Vegas, trust me.
Yeah, exactly.
Trust me. And I'm not just talking about losing money. I'm talking about getting hurt in Vegas. It's actually, in my opinion, more dangerous in many cities.
Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco.
Then, and in the media hype. And they don't want the American dollars to leave America.
Right.
And that is, I know that's inflammatory, but seems to me, after 4 years of being down there, that it is a problem only because it is made a problem. Because the more dollars that are spent down there, the less it benefits the economy up here. And you're talking a drop in the bucket, but they want every drop. They don't want, in the meantime, you got a lot of hard-working people down there who risk COVID. They don't have the protections we have.
Yeah.
And they work, they're still wearing masks to the grocery store. They're still wearing masks when they serve you. They are still using the hand sanitizer all the time. And it's not because they're stuck in the dark ages, because they just don't have the government help and the government protections that we have been afforded. We have an option. They don't have. We have an option to get poked or not get poked. They don't even have an option for that. So, and they are really good people.
Oh, 100%. I can't thank you enough, Frank. We're going to have to do a second edition of this, man. You are so knowledgeable. You are so open with sharing so much stuff. And I can't thank you enough for, bringing to my mind Flynn Robinson again.
Oh, my goodness.
And other people that sometimes in your busy life you don't take the time to think about, and you've done that, and it's great. And I'm going to see you November 26th because we're going to go down with these guys, Blackfin guys, and do a thing with an orphanage down there. And then after, they're going to have a great party and everything.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I will definitely be a part of that. I'm grateful that you are coming down. And those people are grateful too. So.
And I'm going to be relying on you to give me scores on the SC Notre Dame game.
There you go.
Yeah, if SC's killing Notre Dame, don't tell me.
Don't tell you.
Which they're going to kill them this year. I can already see it coming.
I hope not. I'm not both of those schools I think very highly of. But we'll be doing those updates. I'm looking forward to you coming down.
Can't wait. Frank, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing your valuable time, and let's do it again really soon.
Yes, we still have surf fishing and other things to consider. So
100%. And hey, by the way, since you mentioned that, before I do say goodbye, I'm bringing my surf fishing rod on November 26th. Is it good down there?
Yeah, well, it's good.
Yeah.
Yes, and you still, because I am the old school 13-foot Lamaglass rod guy, you told me you would teach me how to use the smaller gear in the surf And I really want to learn how to do that because, you know, we all need to evolve. You know,
Absolutely.
I'm still using monofilament line too. I don't use braided line, so I still need some evolution.
How about we teach one another?
There we go.
Perfect.
There we go.
Frank, thanks
All
again.
right. All right, sir. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, my friend.
Okay.
Thank you.